Chapter 7. Back when Florida was wild, when it consisted of nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you, Miss Franny Block started in, and I was just a little girl no bigger than you, my father, Herman W. Block, told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday, anything at all. Miss Franny looked around the library. She leaned in close to me. I don't want to appear prideful, she said, but my daddy was a very rich man. A very rich man. She nodded and leaned back and said, and I was a little girl who loved to read. So I told him, I said, Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful. You asked for a whole library? A small one, Miss Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we're sitting in now, and at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes, ma'am. What about the bear? I asked. Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days? Miss Franny Block said. Uh-huh, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild beasts. Like bears. Yes, ma'am, that's right. Now, I have to tell you, I was a little Miss Know-It-All. I was a Miss Smarty Pants, with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am, I thought I knew the answers to everything. Well, one hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and the windows open, and my nose stuck in a book, when a shadow crossed the desk, and without looking up, yes, ma'am, without even looking up, I said, Is there a book I can help you find? Well, there was no answer, and I thought it must have been a wild man or a wild woman, scared of all these books, and afraid to speak up. And then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am, a very large bear. How big? I asked. Oh, well, said Miss Franny, perhaps 3 or 4 times the size of your dog. Well, then what happened? I asked her. Well, said Miss Franny, I looked at him and he looked at me, and he put his big nose up in the air and sniffed as if he were trying to decide if Miss Little Know-It-All Librarian was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there. And then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I'm not going to let it happen without a fight. No, ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully, I raised up a book, the book that I was reading. What book was that? I asked. Why, it was War and Peace, a very large book. I raised it up slowly, then aimed it carefully and threw it right at the bear and screamed, Be gone! And you know what? No, ma'am, I said. He went. And this is what I will never forget. He took the book with him. Nuh-uh, I said. Yes, ma'am, said Miss Franny. He snatched it up and ran. Did he come back? I asked. No, I never saw him again. Well, the man in town used to tease me about it. They used to say, Miss Franny, we saw that bear of yours out in the woods today. He was reading that book, and he said it sure was good. And would it be all right if he kept it for just another week? Yes, ma'am, they did tease me about it. She sighed. I imagine I'm the only one left from those days. I imagine I'm the only one that even recalls that bear. All of my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they're all dead and gone. She sighed again. Oh, she looked sad and old and wrinkled in the same way I felt sometimes, being friendless in a new town and not having my mama to comfort me. I sighed too. Winn-Dixie raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny. He sat up, then showed Miss Franny his teeth. Well, now look at that, she said. That dog is smiling at me. It's a talent of his, I told her. Well, that's a fine talent, Miss Franny said. A very fine talent. And she smiled back at Winn-Dixie. We could be friends, I said to Miss Franny. I mean, you and me and Winn-Dixie, we could all be friends. Miss Franny smiled even bigger. Why, that would be grand, just grand. And right at that minute, right when the 3 of us had decided to become friends, who should come marching into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library but an old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, "I finished Johnny Tremaine, and I enjoyed it very much, but I would like something even more difficult to read now, because I am an advanced reader." "Oh, yes, dear, I know," said Miss Franny, and she got up out of her chair. Amanda pretended like I wasn't even there. She stared right past me. "Are dogs allowed in the library?" she asked Miss Franny as they walked away. "Certain ones," said Miss Franny, "a select few." And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had made my first friend in Naomi, and nobody was going to mess that up for me. Not even old pinched-face Amanda Wilkinson. And that's chapter 7.